Testing the audio. Hello. Okay, right, I think we're live. Right, hello everybody. Thank you for coming to the first sticky note, and hello to everybody on the internet as well. So we basically have a culture of sharing and learning at the User Story, and so we've always kind of done this a bit more casually. We've always shared things when we've learnt stuff, and I think it would be nice actually for us to just come together every couple of weeks and share something that we know that we think everyone else might like to know too. So that's what we're calling this new series, which is Sticky Notes. It's going to be every 2 weeks, generally on a Friday, although the Queen had other ideas for the next one. So we're actually going to do that on Wednesday. And when possible, we'll get everyone together and we'll learn a thing. The idea is that it's 15 minutes and it's just a kind of a chat, really. There might be slides, there might not. It could be just some written notes on a bit of paper. It could be much better prepared than what I've come up with today. But the idea is it should be something that gives you something which Katie came up with earlier, which I thought was really good, which is what was it you said?
Enough to get you relevant Google results.
Enough to give you relevant Google results. So enough of something that it sort of piques your interest. It gives you enough to get started, but actually you might want to go and find some more about it on the internet afterwards. To those on the internet as well, thanks for joining us. This is obviously most for the team here, but it's really nice to have you with us as well. And obviously, if you've got any questions, chuck them in the chat. We might not come to them today because we're going to run through this really quickly and let everyone eat their lunch and enjoy the talk. But if you've got questions, I'll try and reply to them to you directly on various different chat on Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever else we are. Okay, so let's get into it. I'm going to talk today about this, which is clearing the fog from your decisions. So it's something that we do a lot of here, which is basically helping businesses to make better decisions. And that is how good design happens. So bear with me one moment. I'm just going to... There we go. What we tend to find is that decisions are the way that businesses are built. Good decisions are what drive business. But many businesses tend to find themselves completely paralyzed when they're making decisions. They make decisions that are generally high risk, or anything where there's an unknown, or anything where you might need to do additional research, those sorts of things. There's massive difficulty in those sorts of decisions, but also in having a common language and making sure that everybody understands why you're making certain decisions and whether you should even make a decision. And so, yeah, it can be very difficult for lots of businesses. So why does that happen? What we find is that it's mostly fear. People are impacted by the fear of making the wrong decision. We never want to feel like we've actually done something wrong. And obviously, if you make a decision that is very personal to you and it turns out to be the wrong decision, that can have massive consequences on a business. Sorry, this is really poorly designed, this software, which means that I'm having to fiddle about every time I need to change the slide. But anyway, and the impact of that, of course, is that businesses have paralysis on the sorts of decisions they need to make. People often feel very left out and very grumpy when decisions are made that perhaps don't go particularly well. And also, if they have information, if they have research, if they have discovered something which they think is important about a decision, sometimes the decision could go a completely different way. And it's really hard for people to understand why that's gone a different way if they feel like they've got knowledge that could help. And what we also see is that hippos, so highly paid people's opinions, matter an awful lot more than sometimes people that are doing research. If you're a user researcher, it can be an incredibly frustrating environment if you are discovering things that then someone else just overrides later on up a chain of stakeholders. So, you might have tried additional research. You might have gone out and spoken to customers to see if you can work out how to, bring more certainty to your decision making. You might have tried to chunk up your deliverables so that they're much smaller. So instead of big projects, you might be trying to break things down into individual deliverables instead. You might be trying to come up with effort estimates for every piece of work so that you can identify whether something's going to be massive for you to change or not. You might have an impact estimate. How, if we were to implement something, how big of an impact might this have on the company, on our users, on our bottom line, or even on our team? But the problem with that is those decisions are often still based on opinions. And what it tends to miss out is that we still don't really know if the decisions we're making are based on things that are true. And often, what one person's truth is very different to another person's. And you see this in wider social environments. But obviously, businesses is a very compounded, and some of the larger businesses in particular, a very compounded social environment where one person's fact doesn't necessarily equal another person's fact. It can be really frustrating for some people that are working in those sorts of areas and those processes, but really dangerous for others. But I think the really key thing about this is you can assess the potential of an idea by looking at things like the effort involved, and you can assess the potential for the impact that it might have if you were to implement something. But what it actually doesn't tell us is how risky that decision is. Neither of those things actually tell us, okay, the thing we're going to do based on that information is a massive risk because we just don't know enough, or not. We still don't really have that solution. So one of those answers is this, which is the FOG framework. So the FOG framework, which you might have, if you've Googled, or you might have already guessed, is called the FOG framework because it's fact, opinion, guess. It's a nice, easy way to remember the way that we assess risk in decision making. So what I'll do is I'll talk you through very briefly what facts, opinions, and guesses are. And you can obviously go away and Google a little bit more about this afterwards. But I'll talk about what it means to be a fact, opinion, or a guess, a few examples, and some ideas of how you might implement this as well. It can be implemented in loads of different ways, and we do it in some specific ways, but lots of companies can use this in different ways. So let's look at what a fact, opinion, and guess is. So a guess basically is our idea is this. We have an idea and it is this, but it's based on very little information. So you probably don't have any input on that guess at all. It might be based on a hunch. It might be based on a competitor that you've seen doing something in the environment. It could be based on a bit of telly that you saw, and you've just had an idea come to you in a dream. A guess is a guess. It is based on absolutely no information at all, but you've still come to a solution. An opinion is slightly further on than that because it is a guess based on something that you've observed. So it might be that our idea is that we want to do this, but we want to do that because our theory is based on this information that we have. And then a fact is where you have that opinion, but it is based on some evidence. You actually have a measurement against it. So it may be that you've seen something similar in the past that has done something that you can recognize, or you might have even tested this idea in a smaller scale. So we'll have a look at a couple of examples. But the idea is that you're trying to reduce the amount of risk. So if you have a decision based on a guess, that's pretty high risk because you don't really have the information that thing is going to succeed, but because you don't have any information, you don't have any data yet. But the higher up this scale you go, the less risk you tend to introduce. So if you've got facts, you can actually make decisions that you have a reasonable idea are going to be relatively low risk. So here's some really nice examples of this. So as a guess, if we build this feature, it'll increase sales of our software. And we see this all the time. Most agencies and companies that work in software will see this. They will come up with an idea, which is, we think if we were to make this button red, that we would see more sales. And that's fine. It could be based on something that you've observed on a competitor, but there's no information there at all. But adding a little bit more information can then turn that into opinion. So when we prototyped a similar feature, people liked it. So we noticed something, and we think that thing might be connected. So that then becomes an opinion. So it's slightly lower risk, but we're still not completely there. We still don't absolutely know it's certain, but it's slightly lower risk. But then the fact is when we actually have some empirical information. So we know that when we prototyped and tested this feature, more people decided to buy our software. We actually tested something, we made an observation, and we could connect those two things together. So now we know for certain that thing is connected. And you can see that just with that explanation of a fact, opinion, and guess, we now have a unified language in which to speak about some of the ideas and things we're trying to solve. So how might you use fact, opinion, guess? Well, I mean, you might want to use it for your design tasks. So if you're creating a big backlog of things that you want to try and solve, you might add fact, opinion, and guess against your design tasks. You might want to look at things like your user stories or your Jira tickets and then decide whether the things that you are deciding in your software are based on guesses or opinions or facts. And you might want to attach research to those as well so that you can bolster whether this is an opinion or actually based in fact. The key thing is actually you then have a measure of some sort of risk. It's something that you can bring to various different aspects of your business which you didn't have before. So it can help you to challenge some of the ideas that you have. The key thing is that it actually makes sure that you're all actually using the same language to speak about your decision making. So you actually have that sort of unified fact, opinion, guess, rather than just sort of one person throwing out a fact and another person countering with an opinion or a guess, and those things being equal. You actually have a scale by which you can measure some of the things that you're talking about. You can obviously reduce your risk. And this isn't to say that you need everything to be a fact before you decide on something. You can still make decisions based on opinions or guesses. But the important thing is you know that they're based on opinions and guesses. So you're actually making that decision based on an assessment of risk rather than just what we reckon. Those things are no longer equivalent. They actually have something of a measure. Obviously, there's a common language around it as well. And everyone can then speak a bit more openly, even to people in positions of seniority, because you both have that common understanding. Actually, if a hippo comes along and says, but I still think we should do this, you can actually challenge with a unified language. And the really nice thing is it actually leads to better research outcomes because you can actually increase the amount of research you do in order to get to fact. So it actually encourages businesses to be more research focused and be more user centered. So that is a very quick whistle-stop tour of fact, opinion, guess. Thank you very much. I hope it was enough to kind of whet your appetite and you go out and start to implement fact, opinions, and guesses in all the work you do. I think we have time for like one question. Does anybody here have a question? All good. Okay. I mean, we already at the User Story use facts, opinions, and guesses as part of our design work anyway. So most of our attributions of decisions that we make are based on that framework. So I'm not really surprised that nobody here is asking questions. That's really good. I think for us, some of the new members of the team, this might be a little bit newer, but obviously, it's really good to have a refresher anyway. Cool. And obviously, if anybody online has got questions, then do ping them in the chat or drop us an email at hello@theuserstory.com. You can get us on Twitter and all sorts of different stuff, and we'll help you answer those. Cool. Well, thanks very much. That was the first sticky note. Oh, thank you. So our next sticky note is going to be on the 1st of June at the same time, 12:30. I'm going to do this one, and it's going to be on, I've actually called it Destroy All Meetings, because I hate meetings. We basically shouldn't be having meetings ever if we can avoid it. All meetings should be workshops, and if you don't need a workshop, you don't need the meeting. So that is my opinion. I'm going to try and argue that case on the 1st of June. So I hope to see you there. But yeah, thanks very much for joining me.